okay, the Rahimon shift. So that is calculated with statistical analysis. So we can see that if we increase the number of n, the time at which we observe the breakpoint time is increasing in an exponential way. So it means that there is something that is not related only with the stochasticity of the system that are carrying the system to go to coexistence. And perhaps it's the time, is this time in which the system enters to equilibrium. But why is a hard question. Try to understand very well how is what is the response to understand very well that. So, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt again. For this graph, is that based on one run each? What are those dots based on? How many
it's
simulations?
the meaning of 500 simulations.
Okay.
But because it's in the log scale, I didn't put the bars because they are very little in relation to the scale.
Okay.
But every point is 500 simulations with the same conditions.
Okay.
And also these are with the same conditions, only we change the value of n. So the other parameters are equal for all of them. So yeah. And finally, like very general conclusions perhaps, we can see that to move from periodic selection to coexistence, first it's necessary to have the constant generation of nutrients, but also is very important to have the biggest cycles present, because if you have a smallest one, then you include another mutant that go to perturbate the system and desestabilize. How can I say this? Destabilize. Thank you. The cycle. So you need to have the presence of the biggest cycles, and also you need to avoid the extinction. So for that it is also necessary to maintain the resource concentration similar between them. So that's
so the diversity here is kind of denoting the presence of multiple types of genotypes, right? I'm wondering, would it make sense to consider how many kinds of metabolites a particular genotype is producing and include that in a measure of diversity? In other words, do we see over time larger proportion of genotypes that are capable of producing multiple types of metabolites rather than just one or two? Does that kind of thing happen? I mean, are such genotypes favored over time?
Yes. Could you repeat?
So I'm thinking of, I mean, so in the definition of diversity, instead of thinking of diversity as the presence of different kinds of genotypes,
yes,
can we think of diversity as sort of the presence instead of different kinds of metabolites produced by these genotypes? In, if that can be another measure of diversity, then we might expect an increase of diversity to mean not only the increase in the number of different kinds of genotypes, but also a proportionate increase in those particular genotypes that lead to the production of many different kinds of metabolites.
Yes, yes. So I think that is related perhaps with that. I see. If we increase the number of resources available, so you are increasing the pool of possible metabolites. So if you're increasing the possible pool of metabolites, I think that is the reason why you are increasing the time at which the breakpoint time is occurring. Because the system requires the presence of almost all components to be stable. But yes.
This is maybe related. Have you looked at the possibility of organisms that metabolize more than one metabolite, or they excrete more than one? So instead of it being one input, one output, you have multiple inputs and multiple outputs?
No, I didn't do that. But I think that is interesting because in the nature we see that happen. And perhaps allows the maintain the system stable if you increase that. Because you don't need to have the different ones to the stabilization. You also need who are excreting or consuming the resources that are in the system.
I mean, I wonder if it would increase stability but decrease diversity. Because in theory, you could have one organism that has all of the metabolites and it takes everything in and excretes everything, and then it would be self-sufficient on its own. Kind of a weird example, but...
Okay, yeah. I don't know.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Seems like you'd want to do some sort of trade-off there.
I mean, what I think of is Coase theorem, right? Which is a question about how big firms are going to get, because there's some transactions that are easier to do within a firm or within a cell, and there are other transactions that are easier to do between cells or between firms. So Coase theorem talks about how big are firms likely to get.
But in this assumption, she's saying that you can eat the same. What you excrete, you can eat the same. So you can be self-sufficient.
Oh, right.
You need to have another organism produce it.
Right, but at some level, it's not clear why that has to be an assumption of the model, because they're also going to, I mean, within a given cell, I'm sure that there are metabolites, or whatever we call them, that are produced and consumed. And so in that...
You think so? Seems like that's sort of thermodynamically problematic.
ATP. I'm not really a cell biologist, but we have a molecule that we have cells that are going to produce, and then we're going to break it apart for energy later. So in a sense, it's being produced and consumed. It's just not usually shared between cells. Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe it is. Probably it is, actually.
But, oh, thank you.